Hi, everybody. It is Matthew here for the DorkLords, and I've got my good friend Dave Daltz.
Hello.
He is back to talk some more Star Wars. We've done a couple of these. They've been awesome. I've really enjoyed being here in the studio with you, and so we come up with another topic. This one is it's a barn burner. It's actually
guaranteed to piss off everybody.
It's guaranteed to piss off everybody, and also take a little while in doing so.
Yeah.
All right, so we're not gonna do like little 5-minute topics here. No. We're gonna take the lunch. You don't take the appetizer. All right, so our lunch for the day, or our menu of fun, is we're going to try to pick. Each of us is going to try to pick one aspect of each of the trilogies.
Yes.
To try to make them better.
Yeah.
So the idea is you pick one thing from episodes 1 through 3, 4 through 6, 7 through the yet to be done 9. And we end up with a better trilogy.
And we should say at the outset that there's some bright lines here. So in one sense, for me, a way to make the original trilogy, that middle trilogy, better would be simply to take out all the George Lucas additions that came later. That's not the kind of stuff we're saying. We're talking at story level.
Correct.
Not like Meat World level.
And I'll also give this caveat. We'll try not to do the obvious thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like people go, hey, no Jar Jar. Oh, take out the Ewoks. Oh, Snoke shouldn't have died. Whatever. We're not gonna. No, we're gonna try to go a little more things you might not have thought of.
Yeah. So. Like, I mean, low-hanging fruit, like take out the midichlorians references. Or
exactly.
Things, yeah. We're looking instead for like the jouissance, the little thing to pluck that would really that sits in your mouth and you're like, this is terrible. Let me spit this out.
Or
yes.
maybe something you didn't think about, and then as the more we talk about it, you're like, oh, that actually, yes, okay. Or you're horrible and wrong, and why did you say that?
Yes, and we anticipate the very well thought out comments that will be coming for as a result of this.
Mr. Daltz, now you respect our commenters.
I will. I will. I'm going to make them mad, though, maybe.
Okay.
We'll
All
see.
Right. So be it.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to start. We're going to kind of go 1 through 3. We're going to do prequel trilogy, then original trilogy, then sequel trilogy.
That sounds good.
Okay. Do you want to go first? You want me to go first?
I would like you to go first, at least for the prequel trilogy.
Prequel trilogy.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Prequel trilogy. I'm going to do a little bit of addition by subtraction, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to screw with the one thing I actually liked about my least favorite which is Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
I'm going to screw with Darth Maul.
Yes.
I'm like, yeah. And I know he's come back now, obviously, in the Solo movie. He got, spoiler alert, and he's come back in the Rebels. But at the time, he was killed off rather quickly.
Darth Maul is the Boba Fett of the prequel trilogy. And Boba Fett is the Captain Phasma.
If you took all of Boba Fett's scenes and condensed them into one film,
yes,
exactly.
Yep.
Because he barely has any lines.
They're teases. These are teases. They appear and they seem really cool. Nothing is done with them.
And I kind of feel like the more you see them, probably the less cool they get. Would be the idea, because they don't show up. It's kind of like the in sports, the backup quarterback. It's always like, oh, you should put that backup guy. He's awesome. And then as soon as he starts playing, you're like, oh. All right, he's no better than the guy that was in there first. But in any case, I feel like Darth Maul has 1 line, 2 lines. I think he says like, at last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have revenge. Cool line. I like it. Want to see more of that? Didn't. His fight scene was amazing. Duel of the Fates, amazing. So, I might be removing it. I'll say this: maybe you put him at the beginning of the film as a less important force wielder or something.
Yeah, how would you restructure it to make it satisfy you?
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I'll say this: here's what I want to add.
Okay.
And then maybe we'll find this place for Darth Maul because he's so cool.
Okay. And I've got a pushback against this. So go ahead. Yeah.
All right. So my thought is the story we did not hear is the backstory to Darth Tyrannus. Count Dooku. So I hate that name, but anyway, we'll call him the Count.
Dooku.
Dooku. Anyway, the Count.
We are 12-year-old boys, yes.
The Count's back. I think that's maybe, it's conspiracy theory. Maybe that's why we didn't hear enough of his story, because, Lucas or whoever was like, I can't keep writing Dooku on this page. Never mind. We're not, no. Yeah, poodoo. All right. No. All right. So the Count.
Yes.
People probably know this, but those who don't, his backstory is he was Yoda's Padawan. huge thing there. He's also Qui-Gon's master.
You're blowing my mind right here.
So those two things are huge.
Yeah.
We don't really learn about any of that in the prequel trilogy.
Yeah.
I would love to see that, maybe even in real time, Count Dooku turning to the dark side.
Yeah.
I think it would be a sympathetic story because he is a guy who, obviously, he was Yoda sought to train him and then trained him. So he wasn't being trained to be a horrible person. He was not a horrible person. And once upon a time, he was not horrible.
But this would bring in my entire theory about the basic flaw of the Jedi, and that is that they can't actually do the good that they're designed to do. But you please continue.
Okay, so we've got him. He's already taught Qui-Gon, and Qui-Gon is not a horrible person. Imagine a situation where we see it's a little primer for Anakin's fall, as we see how a well-respected Jedi could be turned. And imagine, let's say, Qui-Gon doesn't die in the end of Phantom Menace. He survives into the second movie and is killed in that big battle we have with Count Dooku at the end of the second movie. Maybe that's where Dooku kills his former Padawan, Qui-Gon Jinn. Whoa! I mean, talk about, the emotional stakes of that, as opposed to guy we don't really know who looks cool.
Yeah.
Kills him, and you're like, oh, that was a cool fight scene.
And we know that the series can do this because that's exactly what happened in A New Hope when we're literally introduced to Ben Kenobi, and then by the end of the second act, we really have the feels when Ben Kenobi dies because the story has been set up in the right way to have those kind of connections and investments, so that the payoff with the death, you're basically doing the inverse of that.
Exactly.
The payoff would be instead the betrayal, but that payoff would have real emotional value for the viewer. Whereas right now it's just the character, and this speaks to, the Darth Maul problem. It speaks to the Phasma problem. It speaks to the Boba Fett problem. A character is introduced that is largely instrumental and not there for character purposes, but is there simply because, we know that by this point there has to be an opening in the Sith. So we have to have a Sith that gets killed that sets up, and then, it's just that's cheap storytelling.
And it was technically cool. It looked great. It just didn't have the emotional impact that it would have had if you'd have had this relationship between them. And oh my God, the betrayal! As you mentioned, the betrayal would be horrible. Also, how does Yoda respond to something like that? I mean, Yoda's Padawan, killing, say, Qui-Gon, like how would he even react to that? Anyway, that would just be, to me, it would change. It would also then have more impact for when Anakin kills Dooku. There's almost, maybe part of him is like revenge for killing, the master of his master. I don't know. There would be some layers there, and maybe that resonates with Anakin when he then later turns. He can kind of point to this moment of, you see, it's good people can go down this road for good, seemingly good reasons. I don't know.
Well, that fits into part of kind of what I would like to see. I don't know if changed but maybe augmented in the prequel trilogy, and that is if we think about the motivations of Anakin Skywalker through the lens of Calvinist theology.
All right, I'm sitting in. Let me get comfortable here.
Okay.
All right.
For those that didn't pay attention to the Protestant Reformation,
we're talking Calvin and Hobbes. Is that what we're talking here?
Something like that.
All right.
So John Calvin wrote probably the first systematic theology, which is basically that means using kind of the ideas of theology not so much organically, like we'll put this here, we'll put this here, we'll put this here, we'll let them play together, but instead really thinking through how one aspect of theology affects another aspect of theology.
Okay.
All right. So he more like a car engine and less like a garden. Okay, so Catholic theology kind of developed like a garden. Luther inherited that, and Luther's theology is very kind of garden-like. They get this from the Apostle Paul. Paul wasn't thinking about systems. He was solving specific problems for specific churches. Okay. Luther did the same thing. Largely, a lot of the development of the first 1,500 years of theology is that. Calvin tried instead, because he was trained as a lawyer, and he was thinking in a different time, he was trying instead to think about the entire system and how it fit together, kind of like we're doing now with the movies. All right. And so some of the things that he started with as premises were, well, God has to be absolutely powerful, and God has to be absolutely knowledgeable. So he started with those as premises, and he read scripture and he said, and some people have to be damned. Okay? So that means that God in some way has to be involved in the damnation of people.
Okay,
And
got you. He's
but-
all powerful. People will get damned.
Yes.
Okay.
But God is also all good, and that means that somehow people have to be responsible for their damnation because God has to be off the hook.
Oh, okay.
All right. So obviously, there's a lot more we could say about all this.
Quite
Okay.
match up, but yeah.
All right. The practical result of this is that, from that Calvinist seed, there grew an entire branch of theology called Reformed theology. One of the tenets of kind of hardcore Reformed theology is the notion of total depravity. Total depravity is the notion that sin is so corrosive that a person who has been touched by sin will literally choose evil thinking that it's good.
Okay.
And that they will do horrible things for really noble reasons, because that's the insidious way that sin works. Now, in the original trilogy, and when I teach classes on this, I talk about this. For those of you that have watched, the
original, not the prequel trilogy.
I'm sorry, yeah, I'm sorry. In the prequel trilogy,
trilogy,
in the prequel trilogy,
I know.
nomenclature messes me up. So in the prequel trilogy, the not the first three, but the ones that are supposed to be the first three within the story, Anakin Skywalker becomes Darth Vader for the best possible reasons. He wants to save his mother. He wants to save Padme. He thinks that he's going to help the Republic. Like, all of these are noble reasons, but in each case, the noble reason becomes the seed of the damnable act. And so he begins justifying horrible things like the slaying of the Padawans because he thinks that there's a more noble purpose. That is, par excellence, the way that Calvin thinks that the entire universe is set up under the regime of sin.
Okay.
And so one of the things that bothers me about the Force is that we get a gesture in the original trilogy with Ben talking about it, that there's a theology there, a notion of how this fits together philosophically. That gets totally abandoned in the prequel trilogy in favor of midichlorians.
Sure.
So we get this kind of secular scientific. I wish that they would have, since we're actually seeing the Jedi, I would have loved to have seen Jedi theology and actually have a notion of how good and evil operate in the universe and how is it different from, because right now the universe is operating by the story universe, let me say, the universe of the story that we see seems to be operating by very Calvinist principles, because Anakin, who has all these powers and should have the ability then to make great decisions because of those powers, instead makes the worst decisions possible. And instead of going to the light, goes to the dark. Help us understand why that's happening, both at a character level, but also at a theological level. And I'm going to use theology very loosely here. Help us understand how the universe makes sense of this, given the fact that the Force is so important in the universe. But we really get the short shrift on that, and instead we get this mechanistic explanation of midichlorians. So I'm splitting the hair here, because my ultimate sort of thing that I change is the midichlorians thing, but my reason for doing it is because it takes us in the much less interesting direction. Like, we are hinted at this huge possibility for understanding the kind of depth of the universe that this story is presenting to us, and we don't get it fleshed out when we have the characters there who would be able to tell us what it means.
You're saying, in other words, it's not just that you would like to have the midichlorians removed.
I would.
Yeah, agreed. But again, we talked about we weren't going to do the low-hanging fruit. You're saying, and on top of that, you'd like to see this basis for this, what amounts to a religion of sorts of the Force.
So, I mean, as it is right now, the setup for what Ben says in A New Hope, Ben's a kook, because he is talking some kind of, I mean, when Han says to him, this is old-time religious mumbo-jumbo, the Jedi, from what we see from the prequel trilogy, would say the same thing. Why are you not talking about midichlorians? Why are you not talking about,
the dipstick? Oh, well, you've got 8 of them.
Why are you instead talking about this kind of philosophical light and dark? And if that's so important, and I think it really is, the Jedi should have suffused everything the Jedi were doing.
And it's true. Like, one of the things, I think this kind of goes into what you're talking about. When we see the Jedi Council, because we see them in Coruscant, and they got their temple. it comes off more as like a business meeting at a Ramada or
Yeah.
something, as
Yeah.
opposed to like, this is a temple. It's like in this big city.
Yeah.
Oh, look, and we've got all the newest technology, and we
Yeah.
hang out in this, and we sit in our chairs, and we've got everything laid out for us, and let's come to order, meeting number 7.
Yeah.
All right. Point of personal privilege. It's not. And we're meeting now for self-reflection or whatever. Like it does feel very corporate.
They would have benefited from actually going to a retreat center run by monks and watching how monks actually interact. Because basically the model for this is warrior monks.
Sure.
And so yes, monks engage in business, and yes, monks have infighting, and in fact that infighting and those personality foibles can be very interesting because long-time communities that spend time cloistered with one another really develop tics. Those tics could be fascinating character tells about why the Jedi are dysfunctional. Because they haven't solved their internal problems, how can they, that could have been a wonderful story to tell. They didn't. They took the cheap route instead. And that's, again, it speaks to we're being teased about a larger something, and we're not being given that, and they don't do the work to actually develop that. Instead, the tease, just the payoff is very minimal that we get.
Okay. Yep. I see that. All right. So we've just fixed the prequel trilogies. They're perfect now.
The only other thing that could possibly fix the prequel trilogies would be more Jar Jar.
More and more Jar Jar.
More Jar Jar.
Jar Jar squared.
I think so. I wish that the internet's conspiracy theories had been true and that Jar Jar really was the mastermind. I'm still holding out hope.
Darth Jar Jar.
I think that's the most brilliant thing. I think that the way that Jar Jar is set up in the films, there's enough there that could have been a wonderful twist and very unexpected. That could have been a twist on the level of I Am Your Father. It could have been.
And it's true. He is so. I'm not a fan of Jar Jar for sure. But,
I'm not either. But
it's like the way that he seems to accidentally succeed over and over again. It is colossally unbelievable.
Yeah.
That he could be that clumsy, stupid, graceless, and just fall into all of these not just military victories, but then he's in the Senate. All this. He gets all this success, and he really has no reason getting that success.
Me so want Jar Jar to be Sith Lord Master.
All right, so me. All right, so we're turning now to the original trilogy, which obviously. It's perfect. We don't need to fix it.
It's perfect in my memory.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
perfect the way I saw it when I was 8.
So we're gonna break it.
It's already broken.
We're gonna break it to fix it.
I can never see it again except in my memory. That's why I don't ever watch this stuff anymore, because in my memory, it's perfect.
Okay, all right, good point. You just watch your dream movies.
You would not believe how many times I saw that film in the theater when it first came out. And
which film are we talking?
We're talking about A New Hope. The film, A New Hope.
Okay,
the one that was perfect. That's the one.
The one that was okay. Good.
All right, perfect as it was then.
Okay, so I'm going to fix the original trilogy that doesn't need fixing.
Okay.
And it's kind of funny because as I didn't think about this at the time when I was coming up with my fix, but it actually leaves New Hope perfectly alone. It leaves Empire Strikes Back perfectly alone. So my fix is in the third movie.
We don't need Jabba walking around, folks. We just don't need that.
No, we don't. And I'm not going to say no Ewoks. Again, that's low hanging fruit.
Although the idea that originally they would have been Wookiees,
I know, it's amazing.
I love that.
So much better. Oh. It would have made so much more sense.
Would have
totally
really,
agree.
Yeah.
But that's not what I'm going with.
Okay.
Here's what I'm doing. Here's the direction I'm going with. And in some ways, it's a problem with the sequel trilogy as well, because they did the whole planet killer base. I say instead of another Death Star, you need a different obstacle to overcome in the third movie.
Okay.
It just feels repetitive, right? They did it in the first movie.
It doesn't feel repetitive. It is literally repetitive.
Well, it wasn't finished, but it was, right?
Come on. This fully operational battle station.
Yes. So, yeah.
At least they learned the lesson. Make the weapon work first.
Make it work first. So much wasted money, right?
Screw the life support.
They built the Death Star.
Yeah.
Gets blown up. They're like, oh, bless it. All right, what can we do? Build another one. And, a few years later, it's also, all that cash just out the window. All right. Yeah. Anyway, so my point is, don't just I mean, it minimizes the first movie for one thing. Like, oh my God, we did this amazing. Oh, they just built another one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Do they just order it from Amazon and then just open the box and they got a new Death Star? I mean,
Literally.
it's exactly. So I was trying to think what instead of a Death Star,
Yes.
what would be a cool, directive for the rebellion.
Okay.
All right. Now, this probably they didn't know about this so much at the time, but they know about it now. Obviously, so in Rogue One,
Yeah.
we are introduced to Darth's castle on Mustafar.
Oh.
Mustafar, of course, also where he was killed,
Yeah.
like destroyed horribly by Obi-Wan.
Let's be honest. Darth has issues.
Yeah, and that's so he built this thing on the site of his greatest failure.
Yes.
It's also from lore. I think it's canon. If it's not canon, it should be. There is a Sith temple underneath that castle, an old Sith temple. It was a cave, basically, and supposedly too, there was a way that this castle's not simply a building; it's kind of like a tuning fork of sort for dark energies.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So imagine a scenario where you've got to take the fight to the enemy. You've done that. You've taken the Death Star out. Maybe the Empire is either in decline or they're holed up.
Okay.
In Mustafar.
Okay.
And the Emperor's there. I mean, if there's a Sith cave there and there's dark energies, maybe they're going to be trying to wield dark side power from it. Maybe they found a way to give the dark side energies to stormtroopers, something like that, right? Like people who don't even have to train, they can just use the dark side. There's some kind of a force-related problem. So it's not just science. It's not, they have a big laser.
I love this.
The force itself is going to be turned to the dark side if we don't stop them at Mustafar.
So let me ask you then, I want to keep going with this, but I have a sidebar question, and I can hold it or I can ask it now.
Go for it.
Okay. At the time of A New Hope and the events that follow, how prevalent is knowledge of the Sith at that point? Because the Sith were secret. They were sort of known about by the Jedi in the prequel trilogy. But by the time we get the Jedi are even a forgotten cause by the time we get to A New Hope. So, and certainly the Empire thinks of the Force as,
right, your ancient religion.
Yeah, exactly. That sort of stuff.
So battle plans.
So I love where you're going, but it would require in some way.
I see.
But here's the precedent, because the Nazis did go after occult materials.
They did, certainly.
And so if you
find the Holy Grail, whatever, anything to legitimize their rule.
Yeah, if you kind of tuned up, if you had a cabal within the Empire that really was jazzed for this stuff and was going out there trying, and it kind of, they did this in Raiders of the Lost Ark. So Lucas has this in his quiver to do this, but they didn't do it here. But I agree with you. It would have made a fascinating big bad to fight against, because it would then be not one local thing, but instead the danger would have been in the people themselves.
Right.
Yeah, which is kind of what the dark side is supposed to be.
Exactly. And then you could still have a similar conclusion where the ideas are going to take out Darth Vader and the Emperor, but at the end, Luke is not going to kill his dad, and you kind of have a similar ending to it. You could have the same ending beat, but the problem to be resolved is more of this castle. Also, check this out.
Yeah.
This would be kind of interesting too. You got the Force ghost of Obi-Wan trying. Maybe he's even reluctant to return to Mustafar, the site of this horrible emotional crisis in his life. Maybe we don't even hear why he won't go, but he's like, no, I'm not going. I will not go to Mustafar. And you don't even necessarily. He's not explaining why. Ooh. But you could even have that pay off or not. Maybe Luke has to go on his own. I don't have Obi-Wan to help me. I don't know why he's not showing up. The reason is he can't return to Mustafar. It's too painful. I don't know, something like that. I mean, there's some emotional little beats you could have there that I think would be really interesting. Anyway, there you go. I just fixed the original trilogy. All right. Anyway, I fanficked the trilogy. All right, great.
But that speaks to a larger problem, and that is, in this universe, there's wasted story.
Yeah.
And there are brilliant things that get certainly it's possible to develop them because we have developments that happen off screen. But it's bad storytelling to be like, oh, this thing happened over here, and to not be like, we're going to show you what happened. And so if things are central to the story, they should be central to the story. And if things are happening off screen, they should be presented in a way, in terms of the structure for the viewer, in which they are minimal. And that brings me to what I would fix.
All right.
About the original trilogy.
Here we go. You're fixing the original trilogy. Here it is. It's fixed.
My problem with the original trilogy both goes through the original trilogy and reverberates back to the prequel trilogy, and that's Boba Fett. Okay. So,
and by the way, just FYI, there's Mandalorian is this new live action
care.
series. Okay.
I don't care.
Just throwing that out there.
It's 25 years too late. Okay. I don't care.
Gotcha.
It's just so Boba Fett is the quintessence of what we're talking about things happening off screen that are really important that we never see.
Yep.
Okay. So Boba Fett is okay, and it begins at the level of merchandising. Okay, so Boba Fett was when you first, because I remember all this. You're my age, we lived through this.
They have that very special toy with the jet pack or something. It's incredibly valuable because they stopped making it. Anyway.
They never made it.
Oh, okay.
They ganged one up, and they did promos of it with the shooting thing, but it was never a production model.
Okay, that's what
and so when it was, because I did that, I sent for the one because I wanted the thing that shot.
I can see it doesn't affect you at all.
The bait and switch of this universe still gets me to this day. I'm convinced it's because they're run by Jedis. But so there's this notion of Boba Fett is going to be really cool, and when you actually get Boba Fett, there's no cool payoff. And that at the level of the toy, that speaks to the movies as well, because Boba Fett is teased as this presence. Okay, so even before the movie comes to us, Empire comes to us, we get Boba Fett at the level of merchandising as this mysterious something. All right, and then, but what Boba Fett actually is worth a lot to me. I mean, that basically, literally, like, we don't know who this guy is, how he fits.
But we do. What was interesting is in the way, I think what really got me on the Boba Fett is the way that Darth Vader talks to him.
Yeah.
Darth Vader doesn't ordering him around.
No.
He's respectful to this guy.
There's a relationship there.
And no disintegrations.
Yeah.
Like, they have a past. He disintegrated somebody Darth Vader didn't want disintegrated at some point.
Yes,
right? He's like, don't do that again.
Yeah.
Please. Like for him to have like a conversation with Darth Vader, and Darth Vader's not just ordering him around, it's like, oh.
Yeah.
That guy must be a badass.
Well, and so, okay.
And also, I guess, and the fact that he disintegrated somebody Darth Vader didn't want to disintegrate implies that maybe he's even, like, meaner than Darth Vader.
And yet Darth Vader did not kill him or choke him for disintegrating the guy.
Exactly.
Okay, so, again, there's this gesture of how cool this guy could be. We get none of that, because it all happened off screen. All right, and then, going back to the prequel trilogy, what is the relationship? Okay, so Boba is the one child of Jango, okay, and Jango is the pattern for all the stormtroopers. What?
Oh, is he stormtroopers, though? I think he's the clone troopers, which are different than the stormtroopers.
Yeah, whatever. No, because that's not how it was originally talked about. If you go back and read the magazines, which I have from the time.
Yes.
Okay, the stormtroopers were originally clones. Okay, and they were all designed to be the same thing. That's what, and again, this was stuff that happened off screen. This was the, if you go back and you read Starlog and all that, these were the explanations that were given for what was going on with the story. All of that was talked about around the movie, and so canon, not canon, I don't care. For an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, this was, who wanted to know everything possible about this. This is what the PR people were telling us. This is what the merchandise people were giving us. But what we were getting on screen was paltry in comparison to this large, vast universe. Okay, and
can I interrupt you just for a second?
Oh,
this
please.
actually goes into what'll be in my sequel fix. I'm not going to go into it. Just
okay.
no, we're going to wait
all
for
right,
that.
All right.
But just to say that there is in the sequel, they try to throw in that line where I think it's Hux says something like to Phasma, I think, where he's like, well, maybe we should just go back to the clone troopers.
Yeah.
And she's like, no.
Yeah.
we're going to do fine. Or not, it's the other way around. I think Hux is defending the current use of non-clones.
But this is why
But,
Leia is able to make the line, "Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper?" Because all the stormtroopers, even though on screen
theoretically, they're supposed to be the same height.
theoretically they're all supposed to be the same height because theoretically they're all clones of one another. Right. That is what we were told off screen by Starlog and others. Okay. All right. And yet, I mean, so the retconning around Boba Fett bothers me because I don't want you to retcon a story about how important Boba Fett is in the universe. I want you to show me how important Boba Fett is in the universe. Because, okay, yeah, it's 40 years later. And I still feel cheated.
Only 40.
I still feel cheated by Boba Fett. And I still want the bigger Boba Fett story to be in those movies. I don't want to wait and get some retconned Mandalorian. I don't want to.
He may not even be in the Mandalorian. I mean, he's not the Mandalorian in the series. So whether he's referenced or something, it's not him.
Yeah.
So they're just going to show about his culture, basically.
Yeah, and but again, his culture doesn't help us understand the deference that Darth shows to him. And you raised such a great point with that.
And the fact that he dies in a comedic way, right? His death is a joke.
Yes.
It's a punchline.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, Boba Fett, boom, and then he accidentally hits the thing, and then he falls into the pit.
And so Han knows who Boba Fett is. But why? We don't know how Han knows who Boba Fett is. Yeah. Again, this falls into a kind of bigger problem with this universe. Why is it one freaking family? Why does everybody know each other?
Yeah, the smallness of the universe.
And this is like
always been a problem.
And this is the like the Sith are not known, and yet people act like a guy walking around in dark armor is a cool thing or what. It's the terror. We don't see the terror of Darth Vader that Darth Vader creates. We see the violence of Darth Vader, but we don't. I mean, if you didn't know about this and you were suddenly in a place where this 7.5-foot guy in dark armor comes in and starts throwing people around, I need to see people poop in their pants because this is not normal, even for this universe. Like this is and
right. There's not 80 of those guys just walking around like oh.
And so again, the line between story world and meat world is fuzzy in the Star Wars universe at best, and there are expectations that are created in the meat world which are supposed to have payoffs in the story world and don't. And there are gestures in the story world which get transported to the meat world through merchandising and through things like Starlog as explanations that shouldn't. And that's sloppy storytelling.
Right. Your story should exist within the confines of the movie that you're making.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be like, oh, and we assume you read the 4 books ahead of time so that you know that in the backstory we don't have to explain this guy. You have to explain that guy.
Yeah.
You can't just rely on things outside of your movie, outside the constraints of the first panel, the first frame and the last frame.
Well, so, I mean, to take a contemporary example, Suicide Squad, a whole bunch of storytelling is done off screen. Like this real
horrible movie.
Oh, I completely agree.
Yeah.
The review on Folding Ideas about the editing of Suicide Squad, I highly recommend. Here on YouTube. But basically, just again and again and again, important key parts of the story it's really important, but it happened off screen. And it's the same thing. Like Boba Fett, he's really important. All of his story happens off screen.
Yeah.
And
so you would rather see more. You want to see Boba Fett in action.
Yeah.
And okay. Yeah.
Or some establishment of why Boba Fett matters.
Yeah.
Other than he's worth a lot to me in Sarlacc pit. I mean, and so in the same way, I don't. If they were going to go back and change aspects of the original trilogy, I would have loved to have seen much less Jabba the Hutt and much more Biggs.
Okay.
Those things that helped to humanize and give some sort of connection. Like, what's the one thing besides the blue milk that Luke actually thought was good about Tatooine?
Sure.
Hanging out with Biggs.
Right.
And so give us something for him to lose, because right now all that we get in the story is like, well, I'm so glad to be gone from this place. And then when he actually sees Biggs on the other side, and and
I think they had even thought about joining the Empire as like,
Yeah.
oh, we can be pilots, or
And they-
like da 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 da.
and all, I realize that
I'm not sure about that, but
you make trade-offs in 1977, and I get that because you don't know what this thing is going to be. But if you have the ability to go back to it, it just says so much about how bad you are at storytelling if you think that what people want to see is more Jabba and they don't want to see more human stuff. But this is a Lucas problem across the board. Lucas is a horrible storyteller. He's a really good technical filmmaker. He's a horrible storyteller. He needs people around him who are smarter than him with storytelling.
Okay. Yes. All right. So we just fixed the original trilogy.
Yep.
Perfect. Now it's perfect.
Well,
so now we can move on.
One of those films was perfect to begin with.
That's a good point. Now, I thought you were going to, I won't belabor this point, but I was convinced in my mind that you were going to bring up the point that you brought up in the past, which was, I think, your central least favorite thing about the original trilogy, which is that Leia was actually turned into Luke's sister.
Yeah.
But I won't,
I've done 20 minutes on that already in one of these. But so again, there were many disappointments that happened between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back.
Gotcha.
Let's just say that. And that there were many things, and from a character and story perspective, I have no problem with Leia being Luke's sister. I actually think it's brilliant. And I think that there's a lot that happens with the story as a result of that that's very interesting and useful within the story.
Sure.
So from a structural standpoint, and as a person who appreciates good storytelling, I actually think that's good storytelling. Boba Fett is horrible storytelling.
Gotcha.
And so that would be the main contrast. If we're trying to fix things, that's actually not a problem that I think the universe needs to fix.
I see.
Even though I'm disappointed by it.
Disappointed by it, right?
Yeah, but I'm not a 7-year-old anymore, so
I don't know.
I'm at least 12,
okay.
But I can put away those childish problems with that moment, and recognize the powerful storytelling device that it is.
That resulted from that.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're on to the as yet uncompleted sequel trilogy.
Yes.
Okay. I thought about this for a while.
Okay.
And I think my fix for it revolves around. I mentioned it was regarding the stormtroopers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Finn.
Mm.
I think I'm going to give J.J. Abrams credit. I think he created an awesome seed for a storyline by making Finn a stormtrooper.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't like, oh, Rian Johnson took over and lost the thread. Within Force Awakens, he drops the thread.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you set up a really cool idea, and then just like, beep, that's fine. That's his backstory. The idea that we learn that, in the name, Finn, right? His name is because he's FN 2187.
Right.
He doesn't have a name.
Yeah.
From birth, he has been bred to be a super soldier, basically, or trained to be a super soldier. I don't know if he's bred for that purpose, but he's, at least from birth, he's been raised as a soldier, not given a name. He's told he can't ever take his helmet off. We're learning the backstory to stormtroopers and humanizing them, which I think is a really cool idea that, just killing them off at random, that you're killing people. Mm-hmm. You're not just killing. I think the idea was to have them in the suits and you never take their stuff off, and they're just maybe even clones. Is that they're less human, and so it's okay to kill them? I think was kind of the original idea. They're robots,
literally cannon fodder.
Yeah. And so to make them not cannon fodder, by having Finn be the face of one is cool.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting concept.
Yeah.
And in that first moment when he loses it, is his first, I guess it's his first combat, I think is what we learn. And, oh my God, my friend is dead. And he's got the blood on his helmet, and he freaks out. Takes his helmet off. Sorry. I'm freaking out. Finn, I feel you. And, the fact that he is human enough to not just take orders and shoot people.
Yeah. How did that happen?
And is that possible for other stormtroopers? You think it would be? Come on. One guy out of the entire group army of hundreds of thousands? No. There's more of those guys in this group.
Yeah.
And so, and you even have a he confronts one of his old mates.
Yeah.
It's the one he's like, traitor! And they have the fight. And then Han Solo shoots him with the bowcaster, and it becomes like a, hey, look how powerful the bowcaster is. It's not wow, like maybe, I guess his willingness to kill his old comrades is a problem for me.
Yeah.
When he escapes, with Poe, just gunning down stormtroopers left and right. They fly off. They have this fight. He fights his old army buddy, and that guy gets killed. He takes off the armor, and he's pretty much never looked back. They use him occasionally to like break into stuff. Right now, it's like, oh well, I know I was sanitation, so I can get you into that kind of area.
Yeah.
It's not. What would be so much more interesting is, I want to save the stormtroopers. I don't want to just go kill these guys. I want to liberate them. They are prisoners. And sure, they might think I'm a traitor at first. I want to find a way to liberate stormtroopers.
He wants to be the stormtrooper messiah.
Well, maybe he wants to take that role. But I'm just saying he wants to, like, that idea of like freeing them instead of just shooting them down.
Yeah.
Would be really fascinating. I think what's happened right now is he's just moved past it. I'm in the resistance. I'm rebel scum or whatever. And it's almost like his arc is over. Like his arc almost, I'm not even sure where else they have to make a new arc for him in the third movie now. Because it seems like he's kind of reached his apex. But just that idea of, I have this foe who wants me dead.
Yes.
And I don't want them dead.
Yeah.
Would be a really cool way to have him try to rectify that inequity. Anyway, I feel like that would make his character interesting and make the series better.
You have just, I mean, you've opened up a doorway to such a fascinating possible set of stories because, okay, assuming that the stormtroopers are raised the way that we're told off screen that they're raised, and we got the glimpse of the kind of factory-like thing in the prequel trilogy, but really that doesn't tell us about how stormtroopers are really, from childhood, how they're indoctrinated. But if there's an ideology to stormtroopers, it would be that you are interchangeable, and that seems to be, and you are to follow orders, and you are to have allegiance to the Empire above everything else.
You're a mobile gun.
You're a mobile
right?
gun, yeah.
Shoot that way.
Yeah,
shoot that way.
But that means that empathy is really not a possibility for these beings. They're sort of literally designed from birth to
They're brainwashed.
To be sociopaths.
Yeah.
Yeah, if not psychopaths. Well, not psychopaths, because they would not be chaotic. They would be following the rules, but they would be following the rules to the letter. All right, so you could have the notion, but none of this has been developed, but you could have the notion that Finn is just a sociopath who's been rewired now to serve rebellion, and that could explain some of his behavior if the story did a better job of being a story around this. But instead, I completely agree that Finn is being sort of utilized, and it's the problem throughout all of this. Finn is being used instrumentally and not as a character with volition and with a backstory. And like you need somebody who gets you into a subset of this station. Okay, well now we're going to retcon that Finn has this knowledge because he was sanitation. Yeah, you can literally use a droid for that. You don't need to throw away a good character possibility for that because droids, you could have a droid that could get you that information. Yeah,
I know the map.
Yeah, and so as you've been talking about this, something that I don't have any basis for this, but there's so Ayn Rand, who is the bugaboo of fanboy universes everywhere, there's a story by Ayn Rand called Anthem, and the notion behind Anthem is that there is a character, equality, and I'm not going to remember the numbers or whatever, but the character is raised in pretty much the mindset that a stormtrooper would be raised in, a completely collectivist mindset where you don't think as an individual and whatever. And that character is assigned to be a janitor within the story. And eventually the character rebels against being a janitor and reclaims individuality. Okay, I'm not a follower of Ayn Rand, I'm not a devotee of Ayn Rand, but I will say that there's an eerie parallel between what's going on in Ayn Rand's Anthem and Finn's story. And I'm worried that somebody got lazy and sort of took the worst parts of, well, there are really no good parts of Ayn Rand, but sort of took this story and kind of mapped Finn onto it. So let's make him the equivalent of a street sweeper. Let's make him a person who's a collectivist who now is suddenly awake. No, there's trauma that has to happen. As you've pointed out, when a person leaves a certain mindset and a certain ideology, it would have been very interesting to explore that. And it's almost as if a switch gets flipped and, everything's okay now. But I think seeing the trauma and, how in the world did Finn develop empathy in this system that is completely designed to eradicate empathy? A stormtrooper is not supposed to care about other stormtroopers, let alone other beings. A stormtrooper is supposed to follow orders. At least that's what we've been told. But that seems not to be the case in Finn. How did that happen?
Right.
And you've pointed out that the numbers are against them. If it happens to Finn, it might have happened to others. Where do we find those others? And
maybe you start a little there becomes this little seed of rebellion within the stormtroopers, and maybe you don't by the end of the third movie you don't solve the problem that they're all like, we're all free, but you've started this idea that's going to spread in that, it's okay to take our helmets off. I don't know, whatever the small little rebellion is that starts, we get the idea that perhaps it's going to spread, and it's going to mean that there's going to be a less of an army trying to shoot everyone down in the galaxy. I don't know. Anyway, it would just be because he is kind of a subplot, almost certainly a subplot at this point, and that subplot added into, how it would meld in with the main plot of Rey and Kylo, like somehow. Oh, and by the way, we're not just going to go kill these people, all right? We're not just going to go shoot them all. Let's figure out a way. They're not actually the bad guy. They are the tools of the bad guy.
Right, yeah.
So let's remove his tools in a way that, will actually be really effective.
Yeah.
Make them not want to be tools anymore.
Yeah.
Like that would be, anyway.
The police going after low-level street hustling drug dealers as opposed to the kingpins never solves the problem.
Correct.
And so you want to find a way to get at the kingpins. Yeah. So my problem with the sequel trilogy is kind of an unsolvable problem.
Oh, okay.
And it's unsolvable.
You'll change one thing, not have them. All right.
No, I really like politically what they're doing, and I talked about this the last time. I think that they're really reimagining the universe in a very useful way.
You are pro sequel trilogy.
I'm pro Holdo. I'm pro. If I could dye my hair purple, I'd be there.
Okay.
So Leia.
Okay.
Yeah. Leia's a problem.
Okay. Is the untimely passing?
Yeah.
Part of the problem.
What I was saying about earlier in our conversation. So Star Wars has a porous membrane between story world and meat world.
When you say meat world, you're talking
the wet world where we live,
we're hanging out in right
where
now.
we buy billions of dollars every year worth of stuff that has Star Wars themes on it, and we get invested in this, and we go and see the movies. Us and that also means the physical actors who make the movie.
Gotcha.
So Boba Fett was a great example of this, where in the meat world, Boba Fett was presented as this amazing, mysterious character, and that never paid off in the story world. And I'm gonna take that to my grave. Boba Fett never paid off. Mandalorian be damned.
Get some cybernetic pieces, and you'll never die, sir. All right.
But so we now have that problem writ large in the sequel trilogy because, all right, Leia is played by Carrie Fisher. Carrie Fisher, no longer with us. All right, so Leia within the story, they had an opportunity to kill her.
They did.
And they chose not to.
They did.
Within the story, I think that that's the right choice. If in the meat world, you still had Carrie Fisher.
Why do you think they kept her alive?
Well, so I think that it's important. Okay, and this now we're going from meat world to story world.
Okay.
So Leia and Luke have a rapprochement.
Sure.
They have one more moment together, and I think that's very important. I am so pissed off that they chose to separate Han from Leia through all the story that we see in the sequel trilogy. And again, the reason why is because something happened. And where did it freaking happen? Off screen. So again, something really important happened that we don't see, but we who watched them become lovers through the original trilogy now get no payoff of that.
Han's just like, well, I had to go back to, like, we had a kid together, and he was turning out to be a jerk, but I had to go and be a pirate again, so...
Yeah.
And we didn't see that. We didn't see him, like, make that choice. We just heard about it in the...
You get told about it, and it's so sloppy.
And I think there are some books that talk about that, but it's not in the movie.
Care.
Exactly.
I don't care.
It's not an excuse.
Because we've already been shown by this universe that books can be thrown away from canon.
Correct.
Which,
at any time.
Screw that. Yeah. Like, either Starlog is telling me the truth or it's not. And we already know that Starlog is run by Jedis.
Correct.
And we know the people that
from a long time ago, these were crates that were floating in space, and then they just crash landed on Earth, and somebody opened it with a crowbar, and then they passed them out to Mr. Dalt, and now you've seen them. Okay, anyway, yeah.
Or, I mean, so...
They used paper back then somehow, too. It's good.
If you can flip a switch on canon, if you can make this story literally be anything that you want, or you can erase literally decades of investment in the story and the development of the story, then all that you really have to trust is what is freaking on the screen.
Agreed.
Yeah, and so that's where I'm at this point with this.
I was just throwing that out there.
And if somebody tells me that it's explained off screen, or you folks in the comments, God bless you, you want to tell me why I'm wrong for what I don't freaking care. Don't care because at this point the universe is run by Jedis and they're willing to lie to me. Okay. So that's all I got to say about that.
So you had the situation.
Yeah.
Leia, they kept her around so she could have this emotional moment with Luke, which was a nice payoff moment.
Within the story, very important.
But the actress is deceased.
Yes.
And you've got another movie.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. So
which sets up, it's great for this universe because it's set up another very important thing that now has to happen off screen. Because you have to kill her. She has to die. But you didn't plan for that. And I don't know where they are in the production process. I don't know if they had already wrapped all the stuff for the third movie with Leia. I don't know.
They had not.
And see,
they're using footage from the first two of these movies. They had some footage from her from Force Awakens. They're gonna blue screen it, green screen it around her, and change the scenery and just have her words. So they've deliberately said they're not going to do the thing they did for Rogue One, which was have another actress play her and then, do that.
I'm at least glad of that. But I'm
they're repurposing footage,
which is good. But I'm so convinced that they're going to do something major, and it's going to be something that happens off screen. Oh, Leia died.
Yeah.
And that again, it's just it's typical for this universe. I mean, Leia's the new Boba Fett. Leia's the new Boba Fett in this particular trilogy. Because there's a lot of important stuff for the story that we don't ever get to see.
I mean, it's possible.
Yeah.
You're right. They'll have a funeral for her. Probably that'll also be fan service, like a funeral for Carrie Fisher in a way. But you could theoretically, if you got the right repurposed footage, maybe she doesn't. Maybe you just end it and she's got like a little farewell thing, and she doesn't technically die in the series. I mean, it's possible.
Okay.
But they don't kill her off. But I feel you're right. I think they're going to do a little honoring Carrie Fisher moment by having her die in some mysterious way.
Han died, and we saw that. We have closure on Han's character. He's gone. Luke died. We have closure on his character. He's gone. The story demands that, with the exception of, the droids that don't die, and the Wookiees and Yoda that live for long, long times, but Yoda's dead too. Like, everyone gets a death.
Yeah.
Their story.
If you're a major character,
you get closure.
Yeah.
The story closes, or there's more story.
If you're one of the handful of major characters in any big action storyline,
you
either survive to the end or you get a notable death scene.
Yeah, you either get, and if you don't get a notable death scene, you get more story later as they continually re-up the franchises. You can't do that with Carrie Fisher. And this is why I'm saying that this is an unsolvable problem, because the story demands more Leia.
I mean, you could do a thing, Admiral Holdo does the which has his own problem, by the way, but the putting the ship into hyperdrive at space, and then
so brilliant.
It looks awesome. Joy, go down this road. I'll go down this road really fast.
I'm Team Holdo. You know I am.
And I have nothing against her doing the plan. One, use a droid. You don't have to be on that ship. Two, if that's an actual weapon, I mean, why hasn't anyone done? You should be having a fleet of just totally no frills ships that just have a hyperdrive, and then you bring them out and go. Done.
Yeah.
All right. So the fact that she brought out that as a weapon and like no one's done it before is weird. But anyway, I threw that off. Okay. Anyway, but her death, we didn't see her explode, right? We saw the ship explode.
People have done it before. It's just happened off screen.
It's happened off screen. But so you could see a situation where you have a Leia on a ship and the ship explodes, something like that. You could have she dies, but we don't see her die moment. But anyway, I'm throwing that out there as a possibility. But
but Leia, you can't do that with.
Yeah, Holdo's different than Leia.
We have to see Leia's face. And this is why it's the unsolvable problem. If she had died when the ship had gotten blown up and she had been blown out into space, that would have solved the problem for the meat world, and it would have created a less wonderful story at the end of that particular movie with regard to what Luke is going to do and how Luke is going to have that emotional connectedness to the salt planet. But it would have solved the larger problem that is demanded by the story, because the structure of the story says you either have to have a face-to-face death with all of the grief that should come with that, because she is arguably the most major character next to Luke, or she has to have more story. And we can't have either of those.
Right.
And which demands now that we have it happen off screen. And I don't know how they're going to handle it. I trust J.J. Abrams as a storyteller much more than I trust George Lucas, because J.J. Abrams is smart enough to have good storytellers around him, because he's a shitty storyteller.
And I do think he cares.
And
too.
he cares.
He's not just going to be like, whatever.
Yeah, no.
It doesn't matter. He thinks it matters.
Yeah. Lucas understands that it matters from a monetary standpoint, but is unwilling because of his ego to surround himself with people that can actually make the story better, except reluctantly. And thank God that he was forced to. J.J. Abrams understands it and cares about it on a story level and is not so interested in the money. The money is important, but he also understands, I think, that he's really not that great a storyteller, and that that if he can surround himself with better storytellers, then the entire thing will be better from a fan standpoint. And thank God that he at least has that idea.
I will say this: you mentioned that Han is dead, Luke's dead.
Yeah,
it did occur to me that we all thought Darth Maul was dead when he fell down the shaft and was cut in half. And, and then subsequently, I think it was in Clone Wars.
Yeah,
they were like, what would be cool?
Yeah,
Darth Maul. How do we bring him back? Oh, well, we didn't really see him die. He was just cut in half and thrown down a giant well. And so they had Darth Maul with mechanical spider legs.
Yeah.
And then eventually it was like, the spider legs are a little weird. Why don't he gets real legs. Okay, he gets real mechanical legs. And then it was just Darth Maul again.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying.
For you Micronauts fans, that's the Baron Karza moment for Darth Maul. Okay.
I'm just saying, so somewhere down the road, there could be a new series. It'll be like, whatever, After the First Order.
Yeah.
And you're going to have Han Solo with spider legs.
Boba Fett crawling out of that Sarlacc pit.
But anyway, hopefully at this point, yes, I think Han Solo, that was a fitting death scene, and we'll just let that go and not bring him back because he fell out of frame.
We know that Meat World Harrison Ford has no interest in that
so it'd be a
character
cartoon, right?
Yeah.
Is what it would be. It would be Anyway, all right. But yes, he's gone, and anyway. I actually did enjoy that scene.
Yeah.
It was a very it was an emotional scene. I didn't want to see Han Solo go, but I did appreciate how they handled that.
Yeah, although if they had spent a better time developing him, old Han Solo, if we had, again, character matters.
Sure.
Story matters. It's not just a way of getting you from A to B. It's a way of actually investing you in what happens at B. And that's why I'm a lot more invested in the new characters that we've discovered in this sequel trilogy, because there has been a better job of developing what's at stake for them and why we should care. And then, literally you could have taken cardboard cutouts of some of the old characters and walked them around, which they literally do with the droids. I mean, we need to have a droid here. Why? Because the kids like it, or whatever. It's like, it makes no sense for the story. It makes no sense why the droids are there in the prequel trilogy. It makes no sense. Although you changed my mind about that.
Oh, did I?
You did.
And how did I do that?
One of the last times that we talked about this,
I'll take credit.
It was brilliant. You raised the idea that the droids are the immortal observers of all of these events. That's brilliant. I wish that somebody on the production side actually did something with that was useful and interesting. It's a fantastic interpretation, and one that blew my mind when you said it, and I'm still thinking about, because it opens up so many possibilities that they are completely squandering. And they're squandering it because they're treating characters who should be characters as instruments.
Yeah.
And
I got you. Take this box, take that box, take this box.
And the stormtroopers are that par excellence, because these are characters that are actually supposed to be instruments. And they're even squandering that story. Like, they can't even get that story right.
Yeah.
So
yes, we've now fixed all three trilogies. They're perfect, and we've done our job. Our work is done. You don't have to go. Episode 9 doesn't have to get made now because we've fixed it all.
Yes.
But yes, I think we've come to the end of our fixing.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed talking to you, sir.
As always, thank you for giving me the chance to do this, because most of the time I talk about boring stuff like invisible sky gods. Actually getting a chance to talk about something that matters.
Right.
Really.
Invisible sky gods in movies. Yeah, much better. But yes, if you've got comments out there, feel free to make them.
Yes, please.
And I will comment back.
Yes. And if you actually comment on stuff that we talked about, I will comment back.
Oh, wow. All right. Very good.
But that's my baseline.
That's
that
your baseline.
You actually have to engage what we've said here, as opposed to just giving us your pet theory, which is wonderful. Your pet theories are wonderful, but I'm going to engage only if you actually talk about what
I'll respond to the pet theories. Dave will respond to the responses to our actual discussion.
But regardless, if you've made it this far, thank you.
Thank you. Exactly. You got through. You achieved your own trilogy of sorts. So thanks so much, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Dalt.
Thank you, Matt Rice.
And we will, I'm sure, be back talking Star Wars in the near future.
I look forward to it.
All right. Bye, everybody.